I think, I mean, I'm an armchair conspiracy theorist, but if I had to guess, I would say that all this stuff that's coming out slowly but surely about Biden is on purpose, and they want to get rid of him. I think he wants to run again, and I don't think the Democrats think that he can win. I think they're right, and I think they're gonna slowly but surely expose more of these like very clear pieces of evidence of corruption.
Yeah. Yeah.
The $20 million is fucking bananas. The fact that this isn't all over the New York Times and the Washington Post and mainstream news, that they're not blaring it from the rooftops, because you know they would be if it was Trump.
Oh, absolutely. Or really any, it wouldn't matter, Trump or whomever would be on the GOP side. Yeah. No, look, I've got a intelligence and investigations firm. You may have heard of them.
I did.
Yeah, Portman Square Group, for all your information and security needs. And
you've changed the name a couple times, huh?
Just avoiding bill collectors. So, yeah, and but I've got investigators, great people. That's the most rewarding thing about building a business is just the wonderful people that you eventually get to work with, and they raise families and they stick with you. And so I've got some investigators that I guess the point is they could have wrapped this puppy up some time ago, right? It's an asset tracing exercise is what they're engaged in. And, maybe they'll stay focused. Maybe they'll keep going. Right? But when you've got an asset tracing exercise, you've got a myriad of single purpose companies set up, around there. First of all, when you look at a case and you say, we've got 20 plus single-purpose companies set up here for pass-through of funds, that's what we would call a clue about money laundering, right? That's why you do that, right? To hide beneficial ownership, to hide the flow of funds and transactions that are involved, to obfuscate and make it difficult for the obvious, because their feeling is most people will maybe dig once or twice, but then they'll get bored and they'll move on, right? Let's make this as complicated as possible. And so you start to see, there's always fraud indicators. You start to see certain things in an investigation. And the great thing about asset tracing also is that there are records, right? And that's what they're finding out now. So and I'm glad, because whether it's Biden, whether it's Trump, it wouldn't matter. If you've got an asshole who's in office and is engaged in pay for play, right? And there's no way, frankly, that this president didn't know that he was being used as the dog in the dog and pony show, right? And so they've got these records available to them. And with the power of the government, their ability to subpoena and do all these things that they can do, they will have the case figured out at some point. The problem with Washington is, do they have do they have the grit to stick with it, right? And then the next question is, does anything happen as a result? But it is, in my mind, anyway, for what that's worth, there's no doubt this is money laundering. And it's pathetic, as you pointed out, that there's so little interest, right? From a completely incurious, not incurious, but just a completely partisan, significant majority of the media. It's not that they don't care, it's that they do care, and they're taking every effort, and they're now having to contort themselves into certain ways because it's getting more and more difficult to provide top cover for the Biden administration. But they've been trying, and they're just, at some point maybe the dam breaks and there's so much paper evidence that they can't ignore it anymore. But you would have thought that some enterprising young journalists who understand the importance of objectivity, whether it's a Democrat or Republican, would have gotten off their ass and really pursued this story, because it's a Pulitzer Prize winning story at the end of the day. But
the question is, what kind of pushback do they get in pursuing that story? How dangerous is it for them to pursue that story? Because it seems like it would be fairly dangerous. I mean, You're talking about extraordinary amounts of money, and this is just what's been uncovered, right?
Right.
So we've only gone back to what, like 2013 or 14 or something like that?
Yeah, back to the VP days.
Right.
Yeah.
So what about before that? When did this start?
Yeah.
Did this only start when he was VP? Did he get his son involved to give him some sort of a meaningful business?
It seems like he was the bag man, right?
Yeah.
And And that's another part of this story that's fascinating. It's not like he was producing anything. It's not like Hunter Biden was producing something.
He's producing some good videos.
Yeah, it was,
made some great photos.
Fine, yeah.
He seems like the kind of guy that you would expect to be involved in that kind of behavior.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a wild boy.
And he's also the sort of guy that you would identify immediately if you were on the Chinese side of things, as an example. Whatever, $8 million, whatever. He's the target.
That's
right?
the guy.
Look at that. That's your weak link next to, with the greatest access possible to the second most powerful person theoretically in the country. That's a fantastic target, right?
Yeah.
There's all sorts of weaknesses there that you can play off of.
And
right?
for them, $20 million over a few years, that's a fucking minor drop in the bucket.
It's literally nothing, and it's a great payday for them. And whether it's Burisma and look, there is no reason he was being placed on boards other than access to his father. Even somebody who's highly partisan on the Democratic side has got to at least be honest enough to admit that. So then the question becomes, all right, was at the time vice president, and then after that, was he aware? Did he know that Hunter was out there doing all these things and using access? And at first it was like, I had no idea, wasn't talking. And then suddenly it's like, well, I was on some phone calls, but it wasn't important. And now the media's got to spin that narrative. Well, he wasn't talking about anything of substance.
Well, there's a new photo that just got released of him on a plane to Ukraine in 2015.
Yeah.
So I think this is to my point, that I think they're slowly releasing this stuff because they plan on getting rid of him.
Yeah. Well, if they do, then what happens to Kamala Harris?
She's gone.
Yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, there's no way. You can't keep her. She's got the lowest approval rating of any vice president ever, including Dan Quayle.
Oh, God. There's a good
Which people forgot about that guy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
He was what they used to, the comics used to joke that guy was assassination insurance. Nobody wants to kill the president and then have that fucking guy take over.
I forgot about that. But no, but you're right. And I think they can't move Kamala Harris out as long as Biden's the candidate, right? Because they wouldn't weather that optic. But if he has to step aside, then obviously it's a brand new ticket. It's a brand new day, and they'll come up with something. So, I guess the question is, do they firmly believe that Biden can't win again?